Welcome back, everyone, to the EPA Forum on Food Waste. And this is session 2 we're going into now, which is titled Pledge, Measure, Reduce, Report. And we're going to hear from the nuts and bolts of the industry, people in companies, in the food businesses, dealing with partners and suppliers as well, who are undertaking food waste actions. So just before we go to our speakers, we have another Slido poll for you. And this poll asks, please select any of the following statements which are true of your business or organisation. So you can click, we measure food waste by weight. We use a food waste indicator, or none of the above applies to my business or organisation, or we have used the EPA food waste measurement protocol or pathway. So we're trying to encourage people to look at those protocols and pathways and adopt them in your business, of course. So in this panel, we have Nicolas Reynolds from O'Brien Fine Foods, Andrew McGregor from Tesco, Fergus O'Sullivan from Aryzta, Robert Duncan from Mabit, and Colin Gibson from the Clean Technology Centre. And those latter two speakers will really be joining us online. They'll be talking about measuring in particular and analysis of figures. So first of all, we're going to hear from Nicolas Reynolds of O'Brien Fine Foods about what their company is doing in terms of food waste.
Brilliant. Thanks so much. My name is Nick Reynolds. I'm the Sustainability Manager at O'Brien Fine Foods. It's great to be here today to share our food waste story with you and the work that we've done with the Food Waste Charter over the last 2 years or so. Let me just go on to the next slide there. Oh, there we go. Sorry. Let's go back. Okay, so who we are at O'Brien Fine Foods. So we're an Irish family business. We were established in 2000, based out in County Kildare. We had humble beginnings at that stage with around 18 employees, since grown a little bit. We now have a team in excess of 700 colleagues across 3 sites, 2 of which are in the Republic of Ireland. You can see our main site there in Timahoe in the bottom right-hand corner. And then one of our sites in the UK just outside of London. What do? We specialised in craft award-winning cooked meats and various proteins. Just some of our brands that you may be aware of. So Brady Family would be our flagship brand. Brady Family was a top 20 grocery brand in the Republic of Ireland this year, as well as the #1 pre-pack brand in Ireland. This is predominantly our pork and beef cooked meats, and it's won multiple awards over the last couple of years, so hopefully you've had a chance to experience it. And then the other brand, a newer one for us as our white meat brand, is Green Farm. This is the #1 white meat brand in the Republic of Ireland and is our fastest growing. I think white meat is seen as a healthy alternative, and for all those health conscious people out there, which is becoming more and more, that 100% natural, high lean protein source is something desired for. So hopefully you've had a chance to experience that. Then additionally to our own brand stuff, we also work with retailers around the country in developing, manufacturing, slicing and packing of their own brand labels. So that's the business in a nutshell. So sustainability and how it fits in at O'Brien's, it effectively is our purpose, and our purpose is one of 4 key pillars within our business strategy. So it's right up there. Sustainability for us runs from farm all the way to our consumers' homes. So it covers our entire supply chain and the full scope of the ESG agenda. Our strategy is divided into 3 pillars of better sourced. So that's effectively how are we creating a more responsible supply chain. And from the nature of our product, climate action is always going to be something that we really need to focus on. And that focus has to be within our supply chain, where the majority of our emissions are. Then we have Better Made, which is really focused on our own operations. How are we operating as efficiently and effectively as we can be, but at the same time incorporating that people element into it and making OBF a good place to work, where people feel welcomed, heard, and they see development opportunities for themselves there. Then better for you is really looking at our products. So how are we always looking to make healthier alternatives, more sustainable products? How are we telling our story in an open and transparent way, and the impacts that we're making, and how are we ensuring that we that positive impact in the communities that we operate in? So I think when you look at all of that, it really does touch all aspects of ESG. There's loads of different commitments that we have in each of those various areas. We've tied them to the SDGs, and we're a recently certified B Corp organization, which really showcases how we've actually implemented sustainability measures and practices and systems throughout all areas of our business. And just the last thing, we truly believe if we can get all of this right, or there and thereabouts, it will go a long way in supporting us deliver our overall goal of bringing better quality food to everyone every day. Okay, so just with regards to food waste, so our food waste targets, internal target is to reduce by 50% by 2026 from a 2022 baseline, and that's our overall food waste, all various streams. So I work with the EPA and the Food Waste Charter methodology. This began about 18 or so months ago, and going through this process really raised a few questions for us. One, it gave us that overarching view of how much waste we had and effectively where it was going to. But it showed the importance of better understanding the various waste streams that made up that overall number. So how much do we have? Where is it going? What is the potential value of each of those waste streams? What is the additional information that we need to be able to better understand and break down that overall figure? So effectively, where are our gaps? To ensure that we're always focusing on preventative measures first. I think that has to always be a critical first step, but then at the same time, for all those unavoidables, is how are we working our way up the waste hierarchy? The waste hierarchy has been in a lot of our meetings, in the key decisions that need to be made in what we do with our various waste streams. Very, very quickly, we saw going through this process that managing our waste streams requires all departments in the business. It's not just isolated to a various position in the business or in the operation where that waste is coming from. You need everyone. And I think very quickly, even based on the last slide that you just saw, and our role that we want to play with regards to being a more sustainable organization, is that we wanted to play a bigger role than just us reducing our food waste by 50%, but how can we actually support the sector that we're in the industry. And it's about making ambitious targets. It is about speaking about the challenges that we have as well as our successes. So hopefully this is a part of that. Next slide. Okay, so just a little bit more about like our food waste journey since then. So as I said, working with the measurement framework, we really got that overarching view of how much food waste we had and where it was going. But it was then up to us to really break that down. So what was our food waste? What were the various food streams that we have? And for us at O'Brien's, it would have been predominantly raw and cooked meat. It would have been bone. It would have been rind and fat. It would have been processing waste such as crumb, gelatin, and brine, which we use for the curing process, as well as the cookouts. And the sludge that's generated from our wastewater treatment plants. All of this is contributing to the food waste that we generate. So I think next was setting targets, not just that overarching target of reducing by 50% by 2026, but having specific targets in place for each of our various food waste streams. And then further down the line, once we've identified various projects or certain projects, what did we want each of those to achieve, and setting ourselves real ambitious targets there too. Then it's about measurement. I can't stress more about measurement and being able to get good quality, complete data sets. It's going down as granular as you possibly can within each of those various waste streams and what's causing them and how much you have and where it's coming from. The more effort and focus that you put in that, all of a sudden the solutions start popping up. And analyzing that data is vital. And I must say, when we went through it first, we had a lot of black holes. We knew we were generating waste, but we didn't know how much it was in each of those various waste streams. But that was something that we could quickly rectify, and that gave us a much better sense of where we really needed to then focus our efforts on. For us, again, around 70% of our food waste was coming at the very end of our process, at the slicing lines. And the scary thing is that that's the bit of the product that's required the most resources to be put into it. It's gone through the whole process already. So from a cost or a financial perspective, that was something that we really did need to focus our efforts on. So our key focus area was really around product efficiency or operational efficiency, and through our PMO, so our project management office program, we identified around about 8 projects, I'd say, over the last 18 months that really supported us in improving that slicing yield and getting the most amount of meat or slices out of every piece of meat that we sliced. And this included anything from blade management, so how are we ensuring that we have consistent cuts, where we're not getting tears, or we're getting the most out of the ends on both of the pieces of meat. What temperatures are we cutting at? The salt levels that we could maintain within our product to keep it all together, the shape and the initial prep of that piece of meat. This is everything right back down to the very beginning of our process that we needed to ensure. And I think looking at that, it really showcased that it wasn't just the guys in the slicing room that had to get this right, but it was our whole team across the whole operations that needed to be involved in waste management. Just due to the nature of our products, we were always going to have unavoidable waste. And that's probably an area that we still need to focus on a little bit more. But it's then how do we work our way up that waste hierarchy to ensure that we are finding more suitable homes and placing more value on this waste resource. So just two projects that I want to call out. One of them is a customer engagement with our MPD team, and this was with Lidl and creating a trim product. So this was all pieces of meat that didn't meet the initial spec of your perfect slice of ham, and being able to find an alternative use for this or product, and this was through this trim product. So our Timahoe site, which is mainly ham, trim product. Now, this happened before our baseline of 2022, so not all of that 36% of operational food waste will be accounted for in our target, but a lot of it would. We've worked on it, we've improved it, and we've gotten better numbers. But that's effectively saved us around 5.3 tons of potential operational food waste per week, accounted to 36% of our current waste generated on that site. Turkey and chicken, so this is a newer project at our white meat site. This has accounted for 45% operational food waste just by bringing in those 2 trimmed products for chicken and turkey, and that's around about 1 ton of waste per week. Then partnerships, can't stress more about this. Food Cloud is one of our key partners. This is for any surplus product that doesn't meet the shelf life requirements for a retailer to take it on, but it's still perfectly good for human consumption. We engage with Food Cloud to support us in getting that food out to over 600 charities around Ireland. We've been a partner with Food Cloud since 2017, and since that time, 43 tons worth of product have been delivered out to all those charities. And this year alone, 12.1 tons year to date has been donated. And we continue to work on this partnership going forward. Just last thing, what were our key learnings? I can't stress more, measure. You might not have all the answers now, but it's like anything, we've got to consistently work on it, improve on it. And at the same time, once you gather that data, you actually need to regularly review it and analyze it. That's really going to support you and identify those key areas you need to focus on. As I said earlier, think team, it's all departments of your operation need to be involved in this process. Everyone understands their role in why you've asked them to do something differently in order to prevent waste being formed further down the line. And a big one, we need to look at this to ourselves as just because it's a waste product for you doesn't mean it is for someone else. We need to place more value on these different waste streams and look for alternative potential customers that we can be dealing with. So that's it from me. There's my contact details if you have any questions. Happy to have a further conversation.
Thank you, Nicolas. That was really, really interesting and real nuts and bolts production line stuff there, which we're going to talk about a little bit more in this session. We're going to go now to Fergus O'Sullivan in Aryzta. He's got a presentation for us, and then we'll dig deeper into that afterwards in the panel discussion.
Okay, so I'm going to kind of give examples of how detail is necessary to combat waste minimization. And the first one, I suppose, Aryzta is part of a large group. I think there are 38 manufacturing sites around the world. Aryzta Ireland obviously is one of them, and we're a relatively large bakery. We employ 200 people, and we've 4 lines. And I spent a lot of my life in the dairy industry, and bread is very different. The lines tend to be it's a huge premises, and the lines, for French bread, it's 3.5 hours is the process, and for artisan bread, it's up to 10 hours. So the group target on food waste is that we reduce our waste by 20% by 2028 from a 2022 baseline. That's the whole group. And I think Odile asked me to mention benchmarks. We have benchmarks, there are budgets, and they are lived daily. We have very set budgets for each line and for the bakery. We're very motivated to participate with the EPA's Food Waste Charter as signatories. We currently are very focused on it because our customers are asking for it all the time. We participate in Manufacture 2030, and we participate in the Tesco wrap scheme. So also on the next line, Origin Green, a very detailed report is needed annually, and we go into huge detail on waste there. We have ISO 14001, and we're very committed members of Circle Era. And all these, I think, you learn a lot, and you're forced into doing things that are right to reduce waste. So I'd be very pro them. On the next slide, I suppose what we feel are essentials to help our battle to minimize waste is we need to review and synopsize data by shift, by day, by line, and by month. And it's critical that we have the data, that it's accurate, and that we fight the large makers of waste. It's very important to involve all staff, and we get good ideas and buy-in. And I'm going to show a few diagrams in the next few slides where we have performance control system on each line, where we have shift changeovers, and management have a 9:30, we call it the 9:30 dashboard, and I'll go through that very briefly. I suppose it's critical to try and prevent breakdowns or prevent making product to the wrong specifications. So startup checks, specification adherence are critical. I cannot, in the baking industry especially, preventative maintenance is an absolute must. If you have a breakdown, as I said, French bread is 3.5 hours and artisan is 10 hours. If you have a major breakdown, you lose a lot of product. So it's critical to have good maintenance. I think also I was asked about senior management buy-in, and I think a real kind of indication of this is the ability to get CapEx, because we're a bakery now that is almost 10 years old, and we invest heavily in replacement and new equipment and new technologies. And I think that shows very good senior management buy-in. Also, because our lines are so large, you do need bakery action plans. You might have to create a gap to replace a belt. We tend to be on call 24 hours a day. It's been the story of my life since I started working in production. But escalation is important. If they have a breakdown or if they have an issue, they can phone you. You sometimes go in. You usually has to deal with it on the phone. Sorry, just going on to the next slide. Okay. And I suppose the accuracy of the results are absolutely critical. So we have to ensure our process flow diagram is accurate, and it has to go from goods in all the way to dispatch. And the next few slides will show this, but unless you identify exactly where the waste is coming from, I don't believe you'll ever get to the root cause and reduce waste. So as we'll see in a minute, I'll indicate, but we have in goods in, you might have damages, or we have some very short life ingredients you need to order on time and not too early. Process, and I have to admit, this is where we would get most of our waste. We tend to divide our line between mixing, dividing, molding, proofing, baking, and freezing. And we have selective dumping we have that for out of specification products, packing, picking, and distribution. And it's in every one of those areas that we need to log the waste. And a lot of areas, even when you're selective dumping product to make sure the customer doesn't get a product that's too long or badly shaped, we need to report what reason. Was it the shape? Was it the weight? Was it the color or the length? Also, we have 200 people, so you have stars and you have some people who are maybe not as good, and it's important you monitor them, you monitor operator errors, you might move people from one area, you might promote people, and it's the same with maintenance. You need speedy repairs, and if preventive maintenance is excellent, you won't get breakdowns, but life would be great if that happened. I keep saying it, preventative maintenance, I'd say of the waste in our bakery, I'd say 50% is down to breakdowns and 50% would be down to process control. And then just to give, just to give an idea that, move forward there, connection lost, you couldn't move forward my slide there, please. Yeah, thank you. So if I look at that, each line, every shift we have 12-hour, we have continental shifts, so we have 12-hour shifts, and each line actually gives any issue they had, gives the amount of time lost on the line, give the kilos of bread lost, and gives the, gives the root cause and the actions taken. So we have a lot of linked files. I'm afraid we're still in Excel, but this all links into a summary report. And if I go, yeah, it works. If I go to the next slide, each line has a performance control system where we log safety comes first. So we log if there's any safety incidents or if there's risk activities. Quality is second, and we log if we've any pallets put on hold or if there's foreign bodies or the cleanliness of the line. And we actually log the waste for each line on every single line, and we log the OEE, the efficiency as well. Red indicates it's higher than the target, and green means it's below the target. So, and then we go on to the next slide where that forms the basis of our performance control system, where we actually log the priorities of the day, where you can see we had on that day, we had an issue with the entry to 1B oven and we needed it fixed urgently. We had an issue with line 3 mesh belt, and we had an issue with starter. So every morning, and they tend to be detailed, they tend to be sometimes contentious, but we always try to have a priority to minimize waste, maximize OEE, and ensure good quality. And it's this detail that is absolutely needed. Next is the PM schedule. Every line, a bakery line lasts for 13 days. It then gets to the stage where the freezer builds up too much in ice and you shut down, clean the line, and 8 engineers go in and they perform preventative maintenance. Some parts are needed every 14 days, others might be needed every 2 months, others might not be needed for 6 months. But it's absolutely critical that we do this. And this is the next slide, is the second last slide. A very helpful way, and it's always the Pareto principle, a very helpful way to ensure your focus on minimizing waste. We call it a waste waterfall. It's kind of a lovely name for unpleasant data in a way, but it kind of tells you, and this is, I made this up, but it just would say, in this instance, we would really need to look at our line treated panner, because for that week, it caused 49% of the waste. Changeovers caused 10 and an oven caused 9. But I think and all the spreadsheets I showed you all feed in, and thank God it happens automatically. The line leads fill in the initial data, and then the other data come through to give you. But a waste waterfall kind of always ensures that you know the main issues that are contributing to the waste. And I go then to my last slide, connection lost. You couldn't go on to the next slide, please. Thank you. I suppose, finally, production planning is critical. You want to minimize changeovers. I'd like to be on the same product all the time, but we have many, many, many SKUs, and it's to try and minimize the changeovers whilst also having to do them. There is a shelf life issue. Now, we're very lucky in this bakery where we have a shelf life of 6 to 11 months, but we still would have some going out. So the production planning process is absolutely critical. Timing, we sometimes have difficult products, and we make sure that they're done on a daytime when we're here to help process. And I didn't include it in the slide, but NPD is also a real watch out. We introduce a lot of new products. It's very important that we get it right. If you introduce a new product and then you realize, God, we've very high waste on this product because we can't achieve the length or whatever. So it's very important to get the NPD and the customer specification correct. Process control, QA. As you're making a product, the weight, you measure the weight, the circumference, and it's very important that the line lead watches that religiously to make sure we don't make out a spec product. Specifications, I accept we've someone from Tesco on the line, but don't make them too tight, because if you do, you'll end up with a lot of waste. Preventative maintenance, I can't emphasize it. I'm going grey, but a lot of it, breakdowns are a killer, and if you have a good preventative maintenance system, it'll help greatly. And I suppose the key from my presentation is monitor, monitor, monitor. The Pareto, it's always the Pareto. Fix the major issues and have relentless attention to detail. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Fergus. That was an amazing insight, I have to say, on the running of a bakery. I mean, let alone your incredible focus on waste and the incredible amount of work you're doing there. And we'll drill down into that a little bit more, because it's obviously, it's a driver of so much of your practices now, which is what we want to hear. But before we go to our discussion, we're going to hear from Andrew McGregor from Tesco first. So welcome, Andrew.
Thank you very much, Suzanne. And good morning, everyone. Delighted to be here today to talk to you about Tesco's approach in tackling food waste, both in our own operations, but also our supply chain. So at Tesco, we've been on the journey of reducing our food waste for quite a long time now. And our group approach initially was, and still is focused around the framework provided by WRAP's Food Waste Reduction Roadmap. Hence, we are aligning to the pillars of Target, Measure, Act, but in reality, it's exactly the same as the principles as part of the Food Waste Charter. So the learnings and what we've found is directly transferable. So for the target pillar, for us, this has meant adopting the Sustainable Development Goal 12.3 and setting targets in line with that. And as both Nick and Fergus have alluded to, measurement and consistent reporting is absolutely key. So for us, what that looks like is internally we have a food waste reporting dashboard where we can track the waste coming from each of our food categories, and we review that weekly with nominated leads across each of the categories in each business unit to identify any spikes. That way we can reactively put in measures to mitigate that, but also use the data and analyse it proactively to drive that down year on year. And that's been the most valuable resource for us in driving down waste operationally. And finally, act. So as I touched on, using the data to define those actions, but then also for us, a key action as a retailer with massive supply chain is advocating and supplier engagement to support our supply chain make reductions as well. So looking briefly at what the targets look like on that first pillar. So we've set ourselves very ambitious targets operationally to reduce food waste. So initially, in line with Sustainable Development Goal 12.3, we targeted halving our food waste by 2030. Now this is against 2016-17 baseline, but after our performance to date, last year we brought that forward by 5 years. So we're targeting 50% reduction by 2025. And we feel it's very ambitious, but also really important, and we feel like we can do it. So confident that we have tied that in, or the performance of that measure, into our executive pay performance. So there is some skin in the game, and we're all working very hard towards achieving that target. We also strive very hard to make sure that no food safe for human consumption is wasted. So this is very much looking to prioritise food to destinations higher up in the food hierarchy, and we want to redistribute all edible surplus that we have in our stores and distribution centres. And finally, importantly, the work we do with our suppliers. So we are actually working with both Aryzta and O'Brien's and Nick and Fergus, and have been working with them in our UK programme to halve food waste by 2030 as part of our RAP Target Measure Act programme. But also as founding members of Champions 12.3, we adopted the 10 by 20 by 30 initiative. So this is a commitment to engage a commitment from 10 large food businesses globally to engage the top 20 suppliers of theirs to halve food waste by 2030. So really it is that advocacy piece. Now this is a look at what the food waste hierarchy means to us. It's very similar to what you've already seen so far in the earlier sessions. So the absolute priority is to uphold the maximum amount of inherent value for that food, so to get that food to customers. So that fully values all of the time, energy, effort, carbon and cost that has gone into creating that product. Where we can't sell it through our stores to customers, we will then redistribute through our redistribution partners, Food Cloud, Olio, and then also make that product available to colleagues through Colleague Shop. If that's not possible, then we will look to convert it for pet food or animal feed, and again, if that's not an option, recover the energy through anaerobic digestion or incineration. But a key call out for us is we don't see landfill as a viable option, because it completely undermines the value of the food and the effort it's taken to produce that. So as a business, we haven't sent any food to landfill since 2009. So I'm going to take you through a bit of what the journey has been for Tesco, and it has been quite a long process now, really focusing on our operations, but then also looking at the role we play as a retailer in supporting our suppliers and trying to reduce that food waste from farm to forks at end to end. So start from the top. In 2013, we were the first retailer in the UK and Ireland to publish our food waste figures. And this is something we're extremely passionate about. We realise our role as a food retailer. Food waste has to be a key driver of us if we're looking to perform sustainably. And transparency and reporting towards that, making that available public, we see across industry as a key driver of achieving that. We need the transparency across retailers and other large food companies to be publishing their data and being accountable for what they're putting out and driving those reductions. In the same year, we partnered with Food Cloud, so we were the first retailer to partner with Food Cloud and started to redistribute our food safe for human consumption from our stores and more recently, or beyond that, our distribution centres as well. And then skipping on a bit, 2016, we were one of the founding partners of Champions 12.3, which I touched on. So at that point, we committed to halving our food waste operationally by 2030 with the other founding partners. And then the following year, we started communicating and engaging our suppliers. So we went out to our suppliers using the framework provided by RAP in the Food Waste Reduction Roadmap, asking our suppliers to share the same values and target, measure and act to reduce food waste. And the following year, we had our first largest suppliers across the group sharing that and publishing that food waste data with us and publicly, which, as I say, is a really important step on this journey. Skip forward to 2021, we've got over 100 suppliers globally in our supply chains reporting food waste data to us, and quite a large proportion of those as well compiling case studies for us which go on our website talking about the journey that they've been on and the projects they've got on the ground to reduce waste in their operations. And then more recently this year, so earlier this year, we launched Tesco Exchange on the Tesco Supplier Network. So the Tesco Supplier Network is our collaborative supplier engagement platform. We've got, so all of our suppliers, growers, processors, packers have access to create an account on the Tesco Supplier Network, and we use this platform to communicate our sustainability initiatives with our suppliers, share resources, share learnings, and try and tackle collective shared challenges. And we launched this tool, Tesco Exchange, which is essentially a marketplace that links our suppliers, growers, processors together, where they can list any surplus or byproduct that they might have in their operations, and other suppliers can see that. And through the diversity in our supply chain, as Nick touched on, there's inherent value in waste. Someone's waste actually could be really valuable to someone else. So it's facilitating those connections to try and reduce waste across the system. And finally, most recently, only last month, we actually celebrated 10 years of our collaboration with Food Cloud, which is a really important milestone for us. Through this 10 years of collaboration, we've now distributed over 7,900 tonnes of food, which equates to about 20 million meals. So this is really impactful for us because this food, as Nick said, is going to 600 charitable partners, is going to people that need it most. So just because we can't sell it through our stores or give to colleagues, it's also we can let the food still have its value and access people that need it most to consume that. So I'm going to go into some of our results now. First off, operationally. As I said, we brought that target, so the third bubble, we brought that target forward from 2030 to 2025. We made that decision off the back of our performance last year, so we made that call last year. We've achieved a 45% reduction in our food waste operationally from our base year, so 5% more to go. That doesn't seem like a lot, but we've really been optimising for a while, so we're going to have to squeeze a little bit more out the system to get there. What that means in practice is as a proportion of total food handled, our waste figure last year across the group was 0.35%. So we're really talking about quite small percentages now in our own operations. And as I say, we're looking to just nudge that down below the 50 in the next 14 months or 13 months. And then on our supplier engagement programme, as I say, when adopting the 10 by 20 by 30 initiative as part of Champions 12.3, we were targeting to engage 20 of our largest suppliers. We're now above 100. 17 of those are our Irish suppliers, so both Aryzta and O'Brien's are involved in that as well. And this programme keeps on growing. So as part of this, we are publishing supporting guidance and documents on the Tesco Supplier Network, in some instances providing one-to-one support with suppliers to really help our supply chain on this journey with us to halve food waste by 2030. And what we found through that is, as of the data collection last year, 61% of those suppliers are now reporting reductions in their food waste year on year. So it's great progress so far. Suppliers are coming on board at different stages in the journey, so we'll have different baselines, but what's important is everyone's getting that support and can reduce in line with the framework. So it's my final slide. Just going to talk a little bit about some of the initiatives we're doing as well as a retailer to support our supply chain and wider industry in reducing. The first one being crop utilisation, so always looking to use the whole crop across ranges because certain byproducts, they're completely viable for human consumption. It might not be suitable to be sold as a whole product, but we can then incorporate that into other products. So a good example is potatoes. They might not meet specifications, which Fergus so aptly touched on in the last presentation, but we can utilise that in topping for ready meals, such as cottage pie, for example. But also supporting growers when there are bumper crops. So common crops that we might see, bumper crops with iceberg lettuce, strawberries. If we have a pleasant summer, which we all wish for, we can then put promotions on and try and shift that volume through store. I've touched on Tesco Exchange, so won't delve into that too much more. But as I say, we've got over 3,500 of our suppliers have access to that resource. We also took the additional step last year in our UK supply by linking in the charitable partners we have in the UK to Tesco Exchange. So not only can suppliers go from supplier to supplier if there is a genuine need, but also they can reach out directly to a redistribution partner to shift that volume if there isn't a sort of synergy to be gained in the supply chain. And finally, we realise the key has always been on data and reporting. What gets measured is acted upon. And currently we're focusing on our own operations and supporting our supply chain, but we know in reality there is more waste from end to end in the system. So last year, in collaboration with WWF, we published the Hidden from Waste report. This was looking at on-farm losses, and it's focused on the UK, but we found about 25% of UK food waste is actually occurring on-farm. A lot of this not captured within existing reporting. That food has a value of £1.8 billion. So we're, off the back of that research, advocating to build a roadmap into capturing that. We're also looking at this waste now in the Irish market and how we can really, truly reduce this end-to-end, which is what our goal is. That's all from me, so I'll hand back to Suzanne.
Thank you very much, Andrew. And just before we move into our discussion, I'm just going to look at the results of this Slido poll, which we gave out earlier. You might remember the questions were really about measuring and are any of the statements true of your business organisation, and 66% replied that we measure our food waste by weight, which is really, really heartening to see. They're very much engaged in what's going on. 17% use a food waste indicator. 20% of respondents said that they use the EPA food waste measurement protocol or pathway. And then 30% said none of the above, none of the options apply to my business or organisation, which is also interesting, maybe suggesting that perhaps they're not doing any measuring. But the fact that they're online and engaged, like anyone watching this today, is you're taking in the information, you're thinking about maybe going on this pathway if you're not on it already. And that is massively heartening, and it's all about action at this point. So if you'd like to sit down, Andrew, I'm just going to take what you guys said and throw some of your points at Colm Gibson and Robert Duncan, who are online. Colm, you are with Clean Technology Centre. You might tell us briefly what you do first with CTC and then react to the first person stories of the three different speakers there.
Hi, Suzanne. Good to see you again. You can hear me okay?
Yes.
Perfect. So I'm the Centre Manager at the Clean Technology Centre. We've been involved with the EPA and food waste, I suppose, for over a decade. And along with Flannery, Nagel, Rapp and Anthesis, helped develop the pathway and protocol measurement methods. I'm a scientist at heart, so data is what I love. And it was really heartening to hear, in particular from Andrew and Fergus, about their journeys in terms of data collection. I think one of the crucial elements behind the protocol, in particular, if we just discuss manufacturing and processing, is the linking of the data to where it ultimately goes on the food waste hierarchy, because this is the crucial part, and it was mentioned by Nick that they continually try and move where that food waste is going on the food waste hierarchy, and we have to go back to that. And ultimately, through the process flow analysis that Fergus was mentioning, this is how you get to the prevention, which is the holy grail that Odile spoke about earlier. But I think it's really heartening to hear the use of data as a precursor to prevention. And I guess for the 30% that maybe aren't measuring it at the moment, this is the lesson that we need to take away, that measurement, while it may start with lots of gaps, it's a process that needs to continue. And is crucially important, really, in businesses achieving targets, our country achieving our targets, but also to the viability and resilience of the businesses involved.
Also, yourself, Robert Duncan, you're involved in the same measuring technology, consultation on food waste kind of pathways and monitoring it. What was your reaction to the stories there and the level of interaction and actions that they're taking on food waste in their respective businesses?
Yeah, Suzanne, I absolutely loved each story. Really good successes shared for others to take on board. It really is a team effort, as they've all outlined. You might have somebody in a sustainability role that is assigned the food waste champion actions, but you need procurement, you need quality, you need production, you need your suppliers, your customers. They all need integrated into the process, and there's lots of examples there. Solution providers are very important once you identify a problem and solving that as well. So really, really happy to see those stories, and there's plenty more of them across Ireland as well.
Mm-hmm. Tell us what your organisation does.
So Mabit do a lot of sustainability service delivery, but in the context of today's food waste topic, we lead up the Origin Green verification for Board BIA. We do a lot of industrial environmental management support, specifically identification of opportunities around food waste management. So we work across Ireland, Scotland, and the rest of the UK, which is great because you can kind of share stories and successes and failures across the different developed regions of the UK and Ireland. We do a lot of work around LCA, helped Bord Iascaigh develop some really good information around their carbon footprint. Developing guidance documents is really important. I mean, there is a vast amount of guidance out there, and you just want to continually talk about it, update it, get people, because you could have somebody that engages with that guidance document in an organization and they move on, and then the next person that takes over mightn't have. So the EPA, Board BIA, and international partners as well, they have great work done in keeping people on the pulse with these, and we help develop those guidance documents as well. Mm-hmm.
Because an awful lot of it is, I suppose, like the lads were saying, people move jobs and, they get upgraded or they go sideways, and the newer person coming into that specific job or role needs to take on those learnings as well. Andrew, you were talking about the targets you have. Are they targets, given to suppliers as well? Obviously, they can't meet a lot of what Tesco is trying to do as its own organisation. So how do you help them along the way to kind of even set targets or meet them?
So it's a really important question. It is definitely coming from a place of support. So what we do is we engage our suppliers and ask them to sign up to, at the moment it's RAP's Target Measure Act. So we're asking them to share accountability, have the same ambitions as us, and take the first step of reporting. And once they're on that journey, they're then part of the community of suppliers that are on that journey with us. And we can share learnings, guidance, and feedback on the reports that they're getting or completing to look to reduce those losses. So we're not enforcing it on all of our suppliers, but particularly our largest suppliers, we're having really constructive conversations to say this is important to us as a food retailer. It needs to be important to you as a food business. It makes sense for the sort of sustainable environmental arguments, but also cost. And we can help you do that. So it is very much a collaborative conversation. We've been doing it for a number of years now, so we can really access that, or we can provide that guidance and support at scale through the Tesco supplier network.
Nick, in terms of measuring, which we're really talking about in this session, does it require a lot of different additional manpower investment? You know, what you're talking about in your slide presentation there looked quite detailed.
Definitely, and like I think a lot of the information is there. It's just not being captured in the right way, and it's working with the people that are on the line, on the front line, and asking them to change how they capture that information to provide us with better information to make better decisions. So for us, once we knew where the gaps were, it was actually quite a simple change. Then it was just providing training to those necessary people in those specific areas where the waste was being generated for us to get a better insight. And with that, it goes back to all the conversations that we've just heard about. That data then allowed us to focus our efforts on the areas that we felt we could make the biggest impact in.
Colin, were people sometimes scared in business to collect the data on food waste? Because I'd say it's quite frightening.
Not scared. We'd like to think it's not a scary venture. But look, as Nick said there, the data is usually there. You think of any, say, I know we're not talking about food service, but any food service business that starts on this journey, they have waste bills. There's implicit data within that. It's just about the constructive use of it. And the key thing really is to start. The gaps are going to be there. I think we need to be realistic about it. I think we need to talk about it openly, which is fantastic. That's why we're here today at the forum. It is a challenge initially, but going back to what Fergal said, his fantastic waste waterfall, which I loved, thankfully, as he mentioned, it was automatically generated, but it wasn't automatically generated straight off the bat. It was automatically generated after the effort had been put in, and ultimately, it's a good business mechanism that should be in place. But I think we've got a historic relationship where, as long as waste, in general, is taken away and gone, we're relatively happy. But that obviously is changing, and we have targets, and the associated impact of food waste are so clear now. But I don't think being scared is an option. I think people should be enthusiastic about the opportunities that it actually can present, as has been spoken about earlier as well.
And savings, of course. Robert, what do you find with businesses you work with, and specifically, I suppose, confining your answer to food waste? What are the biggest barriers in getting them on a journey if they're quite new to it, or just keeping them focused?
I guess it's competing priorities. You look at food waste, obviously very important, but there's other topics that are coming up to the fore, whether it's biodiversity, whether it's recycled content of packaging. There's a whole host of competing priorities and who's taking the ownership. And I think what's really important is to look at how do you influence internally. Do you look at the true cost of that waste, and has it been calculated? And we see in guidance documents we're talking about €1,000 per ton of waste, and if you look at the cost of taking waste off site, it's not very costly compared to other business costs. So you're really looking at how do you improve that influence internally to get it up the priority list, and also maybe taking some quick wins to demonstrate successes to then move on from those, the no and low cost ones first, or looking at the biggest issues and doing a lot of the real heavy data analysis and process mapping there first. So it's not a quick fix. It's a continual process, and you want to make sure you're armed with the right influencing data. And sustainability is environmental sustainability, but it's also social. So what social impact can your changes have as well? And the economic impact cannot be ignored as well, because businesses are always looking at their profit margins and other pressures, cost pressures. So we need to have a rounded approach to it.
Absolutely, Robert. Andrew, I might just go back to food retailers, and I know the guys mentioned it in terms of specifications and product specs. And food retailers are very often given a lot of criticism from food producers and food manufacturers that their specifications lead to food waste because they are, they're so regimented on exactly what product they want and exactly its appearance and consistency, that leads to food waste. Is that been addressed at all in terms of the suppliers, coming into you, the food coming into you, and maybe widening specifications? Does that ever come up in discussions?
So it absolutely is part of the discussion in terms of as it all comes back to the data. So as Fergus touched on, when they're going through the checks, quality's first, and then it's minimising waste. So we have our specifications for those reasons. For the suppliers that are on this journey with us and reporting data to us, we can identify where the areas are and have very open, honest and transparent conversations around what the root causes are. So if we're getting that data and we're involved in that conversation, then we can initiate projects to reduce. And as I gave the potato example, in some cases it's not actually capturing that in the whole product, but repurposing the byproduct into something else which is still fit for human consumption. So.
I know that some people would comment, in the grocery sector that you have almost such power in the food chain that you also have the power to perhaps educate consumers to slightly different products, that carrots don't have to look a certain way, that fruit doesn't have to be uniform, because the interaction and the interface that most of us have with food is through retailers.
You're absolutely right. So majority of people getting their food through retailers, and the influence on customer is really important, not only on their expectations of product, but also reducing food waste at home, which also is a massive area. So we are constantly looking at how we can not just advocate upstream to suppliers, but also to consumers to take a different view on, so for example, our Perfectly Imperfect range, packaging products that normally wouldn't have made it through the specifications. But then certain campaigns, such as our Use Up Day campaign that was run last year in the UK, to try and educate the consumer that actually we're doing what we can, as far as we can, to reduce waste. Everyone has a responsibility on this journey, and there are actions that everyone can take. Yes,
at home. Okay, very good. We better wrap up this session now, because we are going to take a short break and then come back in the last session and dig into a few more things on the international context of reporting and food waste sort of strategies from an international point of view. So thanks to all our speakers, and we will see you back here at 12:10.